Welcome, everyone. As we move toward the fifth European discussion on climate risk and finance, we must address the gap between setting climate targets and operating a stable carbon free grid. To explore how we can bridge that gap, I'm joined by Julia Souder. Julia is the CEO of the Long Duration Energy Storage Council and chair of the Global Renewables Alliance. She has spent over 25 years navigating the complexity of energy policy and grid operations. From her time at the US Department of Energy to leading global coalitions today. Her work centers on a massive challenge: scaling energy storage technologies 50 times over by 2040 and unlock $4 trillion investment opportunity. In this 10 minutes Industry Blitz, we will dive straight to talk about the practicality of storage, the necessity of diverse leadership, and the market signals required to make 24/7 clean energy a reality. Julia, thank you for joining this interview today and for setting the stage for our upcoming fifth European leader discussion. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity, Salima. This is fabulous to be with you again.
So, to start, I have a question for you today. I have a series of questions, but let's start with the first one. Why is having more women in leadership crucial to shifting the energy sector from the fossil fuels to collaborative approach and clean resources?
That's a great question because it really points to the need of diversity of thought. We gain so much more when you have different perspectives, different stories, different backgrounds come to the table to debate ideas, to really bring forward the best ideas. And if you've seen over the last few years, when you have over 20% and 30% of board diversity, not only in gender, but also age, you can see over 25% increase in profitability. And this has been a lot of conversations have happened at the World Economic Forum, where I just was in Davos, speaking about the importance of different perspectives and how much more value it can bring to organizations. Plus, the fact that many generations are looking forward to diverse perspectives to represent their points of view as well. So you can connect to the customers just as much.
Thank you, Julia. Going to international scene, what is the main principle behind global effort to improve energy access while we are safeguarding our climate and resources?
It is super important to look at how we're balancing this urgency of addressing the constant weather patterns that are affecting our daily lives to looking at the affordability. How do we pay for infrastructure that we need for our livelihoods? And this is where long duration storage comes in as part of a solution, whether you're in farms, islands, rural communities, urban centers. There are solutions to help address the needs of various customers, really showing that we need to have choices to give us the flexibility to look at different technologies that can provide around the clock energy, around the clock heat in a very affordable way. And this is something, again, that long duration energy storage provides today, which is so important for addressing these ever changing needs.
Going to the needs, we see that LDES Council estimate the need to jump 50-fold by 2040. What the main regulatory barrier that can harder and make it more difficult to reach this goal right now? What you see?
What's great to note is that this is a big number, 50 times over, but it has been done before. If you look at various industries really starting to scale, you reach a tipping point once you start removing some barriers. And so this can be achieved if we look at, I think, four key areas. One is the revenue risk. Like, how do we demonstrate the predictability in the long-term revenue? And how do you really make sure that you're really determining bankability? And then by doing so, you really need to look at the standardization of the performance data, the modeling tools. Are they even giving the right attributes to all the ancillary services that long duration energy storage can provide? So it's updating the models to really make sure that you're really able to see the entire picture to really get a good picture of the risk. And then really starting to better understand moving from pilots to commercialization. There are some first of kind projects, but we have over 500 projects in the pipeline and over 250 deployed already today. So it's really trying to demystify that this is 10 years away. We have long duration storage technologies, including pumped hydro, that have been around for 100 years, compressed air, liquid air, carbon that's been around for batteries for 10, 20 years. And it's kind of the new attributes of really bringing together kind of the benefits of really starting to scale. And so we're really trying to show that we can bring warranties insurance into the blended finance rules. And that goes to the last point on cost of capital, where you're looking at how do you look at blended formulas with VC, private banks, institutions to look at how can you manage debt and equity and new percentage-wise and formulas that ensure the fact that you can get your money paid back in a couple of years because you were able to put up a little more risk because you all shared a bit more of that with the blended finance portfolio. So I think it's really looking at how we can achieve this framework of achieving bankability on getting the right business models, working on capital alignment, and then really looking at transparency to how these market signals and getting access to the market is so key. We talk about flexibility, we talk about resiliency, we talk about security, we now have long duration energy storage solutions that can meet all of these needs, but they need to access the market and get paid for their services so we can show the benefits so we can achieve this 50 times scale up. So there are a lot of different ways we can do this, and we're working with many partners of how we can really bring everyone to the table so we really see the entire picture of insurance, warranties, bankability models, different tools that we can all use to really bring, again, the benefits to the marketplace. So we're working on policies to broaden the markets to access. I think this is so important for, again, this combined coalition of really ensuring that we can finance and deploy long duration energy storage.
Thank you. Talking about how to scale, you talked about the different part and aspect of it, but going back to market signals, you've called for a clear market signals like the UK cap and floor scheme. What does a bankable LDS projects look like in 2026 right now?
That's a great question. So, what's wonderful is that we have many projects in construction today, and they're bankable because they are able to meet the needs of what regulators have outlined for reliability, flexibility. They're able to ensure around the clock power, heat at a low cost. They're also adding additional benefits like decreasing emissions or providing inertia. Another component is the fact that they are bankable because they are also, in addition to addressing policy needs, they're addressing the reliability needs and the security needs. Like you have local homegrown energy, heat, power that you can use on site. And I think that is also what makes this very bankable, is that over time, these are very low cost assets. And I think that's why it's so important to show that the bankability, there might be some upfront CapEx costs, but because of these long-term contracts, it really demonstrates the bankable value of providing all these additional services. So we have the ability to, the policies that are starting to support long duration storage, we're having more of the bankable financing tools. And now we have a lot more of the needs of utilities and many other customers being met by other solutions, demonstrating that they can deploy and scale, and again, providing this value add. I think it's really important to highlight how long duration storage promotes reliability and the fact that we can keep the lights on over days, weeks, months, which is so critical to our local economies. And I think this is so important to demonstrate that in 2026, this year, we have a lot of projects that are providing services around the clock.
Thank you. You talked about, by talking about heat and the utilities, LDS extend beyond the grid to include power to heat for industry. How can climate finance push heavy industries from gas boiler to thermal storage?
Well, one thing I think it's amazing to see just the cost savings. So the economics speak for themselves. So when you can see how thermal energy storage, because you're using rocks, salts, bricks, and different types of very low cost materials that you can store heat in a range from 150 degrees Celsius up to 2000 degrees Celsius, you can meet the needs that a gas boiler can do today and provide this constant reliability, security, and resiliency services while also decreasing emissions and helping meet other goals. What's great is that I like to speak to the four families of long duration storage. And as you mentioned, the power to heat is so critical for our industrial sector. We have many members that have deployed. We're looking at Thailand, Rondo with a cement factory. If you're looking at Kraftwerk in Germany, if you're looking at Bryn Miller and breweries, like we are already deployed, providing value in a variety of ways. And you're looking at companies coming down the stream to continue to look at their improvements with how they provide and address industrial customers' need. We also have the mechanical and the electrochemical, so all the elements on the periodic table can be mixed into different battery configurations, and then the power to X, so you're looking at the hydrogen, the methane, and ammonia. So this diversity of portfolio is so important to the diversity of needs globally, that really demonstrates that what you need in an island, you're going to need a different in Europe, and you might need something very different in an urban center versus something in an agricultural or a port. You have different needs that these different technologies can meet. And I think that's why it's so important to look at the power to heat side, because it does really meet a lot of industrial sectors' concerns over growing fuel prices because of the volatility.
Thank you, Julia. It's really interesting, and I will love to continue, but time is up. But before we go, let me ask you a final question and close this discussion on a light note. If the global energy grid were a farm animal, which would be? And will it need a fence or maybe more room to roam?
It's such a fun question, and my mind jumps in different directions because so many people talk about the grid as the chicken or the egg, and it's kind of both because you need both to really push the process. But I really think as
Yeah.
a specific animal, I was thinking more of something from like the safari, like from like a giraffe, something that is kind of not really understood, but so beautiful and so necessary for the ecosystem. And it has these different structures that people sometimes love or dislike. I was thinking of the transmission lines and then just the infrastructure that I think it's kind of like a giraffe in some ways, so important, can go long distances, has this very beautiful body, but some people are curious about like spots of what. I think it's because of that. That's what made things. I think about the grid. There's this complexity and this misunderstanding to the beauty that it brings, and why I think it's again those different perspectives that we can really bring. So, in some way, they say a giraffe, chicken, and egg, with no fence.
That's new. I didn't expect to have this response. Let's think about giraffe. Julia, thank you. It's always a pleasure to welcome you at the ICWS network and
Thank
discussions.
you.
And thank you for showing us this time that LDS is the shock absorber that we can use to make an affordable, resilient system possible in Europe, in North America, everywhere we can. And let's keep that in mind while we will jump on 26 on our session on climate risk. Thank you so much, Julia, for being
Thank
with
you
us.
again so much.
Welcome, everyone, as we move toward the fifth European discussion on climate risk